Okay, we're talking chapter 5, the legacy of learning modules. You've made it this far, let's keep pushing. Chapter 5 is reading, the enormous amount of reading that you'll need throughout the entire semester for all of your coursework, and writing the papers that go along with these readings, right? So reading is first, obviously, because in order to put something out, you have to put something in. That brings me to the subtitle of this module or this chapter. Garbage in, garbage out. Okay, reading and writing is going to consume an enormous amount, the vast majority of your time, especially the time you find valuable in your semester, getting closer to the midterms and getting closer to your finals is when most of these papers will be demanded by your professors. Now, in order to surmount this amount of reading, you're going to have a plan. And I suggest and I recommend a daily reading plan where you'll be reading according to your formula, which is if I have 4 or 5 classes, each class, depending on what it is, may require me to read a chapter or 2 a week. So we have 4 classes times 2 chapters, that's 8 chapters. Realistically, it should not take you more than an hour to read a chapter. So based on what we're hearing here, we have approximately 4 classes, 2 chapters, 8 hours of reading. And that can be segmented throughout your week. Now, how you do it is basically by setting a regimented time every day that you read. And depending on how much work, you may have to do that twice a day. Now you have your segmented, regimented reading times. And it's easy to come back to reading, as I told you before. A tip will come later on to help you with that, and I'll talk more about it. But this will help you with your reading. Now, reading a chapter or 2 a day is not as hard as it sounds. What you do is, though you're segmenting your chapters throughout the week, you're also segmenting your reading time. You're going to read maybe 2 hours at a time, and you're going to divide that time into 55 to 60-minute intervals. So now we have it set where you know I have places set in my schedule to read, and I have assigned chapters per week to read them in, and it's on your schedule. After a while, it becomes natural. You don't think about it. That time hits, you whip out your book, you knock it out, you take some notes, and then you move on to your next scheduled activity. So remember, if you did the other exercise right on time and the one on scheduling, this makes complete sense to you. Everything is structured. And what you'll be doing is, now that you have a better understanding, when you do your scheduling, is that you know I have to put aside an hour here, an hour there for reading, and designate that, if you like, designate that time as reading. Life will be so much easier once you organize everything. Now, reading is, as I noted here, it is 2 different types of reading. Let me start there. There's reading for entertainment, leisure, and then there's reading for technical reasons or for school or for work. In this case, we're not reading for leisure, we're not reading for entertainment. We are reading for comprehension, which is different. Speed is second, comprehension comes first. In fact, the more you comprehend, the better your speed improves. The better you get a flow of what the subject matter is, the better you are at anticipating the next thoughts or the next writings or the next ideas that may be presented to you, because you have reference. How do you get that reference? Now here's the nuts and bolts of what we'll be doing. Is remember, I told you, I'll show you as well as tell you what to do. So this is the show you part. All right, guys? This is very important, so pay attention if you haven't intently up until this point. Here's where I show you how to do this. The first thing you do, which you've done already, but I'm going to go back to it again, is that once you get your book, novel, whatever the assigned course reading is, get some time, get this information before your semester starts. We already talked about this. Now we actually have the book in my hand. Okay? Now what I'm going to do is not pick this thing up the first time when it needs to be read for my coursework. That will set me back. In fact, I want to pick this up 2-3 weeks ahead of time. That's why I went to the bookstore, remember? 2-3 weeks ahead of time to have this book. Why have it sitting there? So anyway, the first thing you're going to do with this book before you read it is you're going to understand it. You're going to read the cover and all the information we normally skip over before we start reading. Why? Is because this information that I'm offering you now that you need to consume, even if it's just casually, it needs to be consumed. It will give you that reference I'm referring to. Reference allows you to, once you start reading the information, have a place to attach it to. Reference promotes understanding and retention. And ultimately, that's the goal for reading. And so you can later on regurgitate and return this information back either in a paper, which is coming up next module, or on a test, which we talked about previously. Okay? So, reading is an intentional thing. And how we do it, first step I said, is by getting to know the author through checking out his book. You're going to basically window shop. So, let's do it together. I'm going to open this book. I noticed that the book is named The YouTube Formula. I bought it because there's some interest here. Obviously, I'm on YouTube talking to you guys. And if I'm going to do something right, I have to learn. Thus, the legacy of learning. I'm still learning. So I bought this book. There's some interest, right? So I check it out. I research the author before I get him because someone recommended him. Okay, this guy is cool. The book is something of value. This book is called The YouTube Formula. What I did was I went and checked out other people's views on him briefly on YouTube. The second thing I did is that I read the cover, I read the inside cover, I read the backside cover of this book. I also went in and, believe it or not, I read the dedication. I read his foreword, which tells, I guess, a story about how the book or the philosophies of the people involved with the book come together. Basically gives you an introduction into what you're about to be focused on. So I read the foreword. It was really interesting. The foreword, by the way, in this case, was not written by the author. So that was cool too. So you got a foreword, a reflection of everything based on someone else's perspective. The other thing I did was I read the introduction. Don't we always skip over that? Yes, we do. Read your introduction. As I said before, if nothing else, do it casually. Get to know this person through this information, the foreword, the introduction, all of that. Because why? As I said before, it's giving you reference, is a purpose for this. So now you understand what is the motivation. Why did this person do it? Why were they so dedicated to spend months, whatever time it took them to create this novel, book, instructional information, pamphlet to give to you. I have context now. Now that I have context on this gentleman or this lady, once I start reading the text in chapter 1, I can now associate it with things that I've already learned about them. And association promotes retention. Association is what we call reference, and reference sets up your reality, your world. If you have nothing to refer something to, then what you have is undefinable. Okay? All right, moving along. So now that we've perused the book, we did everything we were supposed to do, we start reading chapter 1. Now you have things in your head to tie this information to. Who this gentleman spoke to before, who wrote the foreword, what was his purpose, a little bit about him. Understanding the author helps you understand the information trapped inside his or her novel, right? So that's what you're doing. Before you even read the first word in chapter 1, you do what I just explained. Now when you begin, you pull out a slight sheet of paper and you keep it with you. You fold it in half, you take an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper, take one out here. Let me see, for example, this is kind of something I don't normally, I have one here. Why? Because I have an 8.5, 11 piece of paper for this book I'm reading. So I keep it in the back. Why? So I can take notes. So I take notes on chapters and things that are important. And the reason why I'm doing it here, and it's because it's not for leisure, I'm doing it because I started a YouTube once a month book reading club. It's also published on Facebook as well. But it will be in my channel and it will be an ongoing thing. Why? Because if you want to hide something from someone, you put it in a book. So hopefully that motivates you, right? To read a book once a month. Not only that, reading is immersive. So just a word on reading and the types of reading. And there's a purpose, a specific reason I did not mention audiobooks and also digital books. I recommend that you get the physical hard copy or soft cover book, whichever it might be, but the actual book in your hand, because learning, when done immersively, is more effective, right? So I want you to have this book with you, and I want you to touch it, feel it, turn the pages, be able to go back a couple words if you needed to, whatever's going on, and that you can take it with you. It lives in reality with you. Learning is immersive and interactive, and when done so, it increases your retention. So what I'm trying to do for you is not have you come back again to this information. I want you to learn, retain as much as possible in the sessions that you spend time doing, studying, reading, basically learning, and help you keep that information, because that's something I promised you. I promised I'll save you time. And this technique will save you time. Now, there are going to be times where listening to your book is more convenient, more practical. If you're working, if you have other activities, if you have family duties and other things going on during the times that you should be studying and you don't have a choice, then yes, listen to audiobooks. Yes, read digital books if that is better for you. But if you're able to do both, have the book with you and also back it up with those times that I may not be able to read the physical book, then that maximizes your time. So I'm not against it. Audiobooks or digital books, I'm just for the benefits that come through actually having the book. So that being said, I've given you as much as I can for now. What you need to do is get going.